This video is brought to you by Betsy Ross Patriotism Counterculture. And the front reads Patriotism, the New Counterculture. And the back reads, I love Betsy, she's my babe, she's my belle. If you don't like Betsy, you can go to the place that rhymes with belle. So let's get into the briefing. Alright, Rebels, today's briefing is from the Patriot Post, and the author is Michael Swartz, S-W-A-R-T-Z, and the title is China's Rampant Human Rights Abuses. The State Department's latest report nails Beijing's taskmasters for their tyranny. That's Pompeo. It's a litany that Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has called the stain of the century, so it was no surprise that the Chinese government was once again called on the carpet by the recent release of the State Department's annual country reports on human rights practices. In his remarks announcing the latest report, Pompeo singled out China, as well as Iran, Venezuela, and Cuba. In China's case, Pompeo noted the ubiquitous use of surveillance on citizens, harsh treatment of dissidents, and imprisonment of religious minorities such as the Uyghurs. It's also been reported that the Uyghurs are unwillingly filling in for workers too sick from the Wuhan coronavirus to work in factories such as those owned by Apple and Nike. Last year's unrest in Hong Kong also drew the attention of the State Department, which categorized problems in nearly 200 nations and territories around the globe in its 2019 country report. Like those of its cousins on the Chinese mainland, Hong Kong's issues included police brutality and restrictions on political participation. Predictably, government puppets in Hong Kong countered that they were only responding to an unprecedented situation that seriously endangered people's personal safety, public order, and security. This aligns neatly with Beijing's long-standing reaction to American reporting on its human rights abuses. A reaction that typically includes both denial and misdirection to claims of American poverty, homelessness, and rampant imprisonment. The brutal Chinese regime does have some allies, though. Amnesty International Director Tara DeMant called the latest State Department report politically motivated, telling the Trump-hating Washington Post, I don't remember the Obama or Bush administration using this opportunity to make political attacks at their perceived political adversaries. The article doesn't say this, but they were pretty gutless presidents. Back to the article. That does not help improve the human rights situation on the ground in China and Iran, where Amnesty International has real human rights concerns. Got that? The human rights abuses are very real, but let's not talk about them. Another powerful ally for China comes in the person of former Vice President and presumptive Democrat Party presidential nominee Joe Biden. Even setting aside his son Hunter's various Chinese business interests over the years, Biden's record on China is worrisome. We were reminded of this by Senator Tom Cotton, whose National Review op-ed this week contended Biden's announcement of his campaign alone was enough to encourage Beijing suddenly to take a harder line on trade negotiations with the Trump administration. As Biden's star seemed to fade, China suddenly got easier to deal with, striking a Phase 1 deal with us in January. It's a safe prediction that they are about to take a tougher line again, added Cotton, who called Biden China's choice for president. Fully half of our nation's people are too young to remember the iconic image of a lone human rights protester in Tiananmen Square facing down a column of Chinese tanks. Since that 1989 massacre of reform-minded young people, China has, by hook and by crook, grown its economic powerhouse thanks in large part to American manufacturing that fled our shores, enticed by the promise of cheap labor and a huge new market. But while the Chi-Coms gladly took our money, they didn't embrace our deeply held belief in the rights of man. For that, many millions of their citizens suffer merely for having been born Chinese. The Chi-Coms' record of abuse deserves our continued condemnation, and those who risk everything to expose it deserve our unending admiration. I agree about that. I really do. Guys, I just wanted to remind you how corrupt China is and how much they have corrupted our government as well and our academia. They have bribed researchers. I won't say anything about Dianne Feinstein, but they've used their economic clout, which past presidents have just given them because they're too spineless to enforce a nationalistic policy, an America First policy. And so now they've turned it against us, and they're not stopping. They're challenging us militarily and economically. So anyway, that's your briefing for today, guys. Go out and speak freely.